We talked about arteries, we talked about capillaries, let's talk about veins. So wall is thin in relation to the diameter. They're not thick and muscular like arteries. Huge diameter, large lumen, thin wall. All right, that's one of the reasons why also when they want to take blood, they do venipunctures because it has a thin wall. Very little smooth muscle, not designed to withstand high pressure. Veins are blood reservoirs. So at any point in time, as we'll see coming up, most of your blood is in your veins, all right? 55 to 65%. It's slowly making its way back to your heart. And what that means is that you have sort of an extra blood supply in your veins. We'll see more coming up on that. Valves are present in medium-sized veins. So you can see in the middle illustration on the bottom, that's a valve inside of a vein. What they do, just like the valves of the heart, is they prevent backflow of blood, especially in lower extremities. So as blood slowly makes its way back to the heart, we don't want it to fall back and undo its progress. So we want the valves, therefore, to keep it going in only one direction because there's low pressure in veins. That's another reason we do venipunctures. Low pressure means that gravity may overcome the weight of the blood itself. So having valves means that once the blood gets to a certain point, it can't backtrack anymore beyond that. Much more individual variation in veins than in arteries. So there are lots of anastomoses in veins, and from one person to another, the map of your veins may be markedly different. Usually not so with arteries. You can pretty much count on certain arteries being there. Veins, to a lesser extent, all right? More variation. There you see, where's blood in your body right now? Half of it, approximately, in your veins. Pulmonary circuit, heart, arteries, capillaries. So venules, just like arterioles were small arteries, venules are small veins. Slightly larger than capillaries, lumen of 15 to 20 microns. That's the preferred location for white blood cell diapedesis. Remember, that's where the white blood cells can squeeze out and get into the tissues. That's happening a lot in the venules. That's where they're getting out and getting into the tissues of your body to fight the bad guys. Venules respond to histamine. Histamine, remember, is a vasodilator, and venules will respond to histamine, and that helps the white blood cells get out as well. Primary place where fluid escapes in edema. So remember we talked about things like congestive heart failure, used to be called, now called heart failure. We end up with edema, and so that's when the plasma is leaking out of the blood into the tissues. The main place that happens, it happens to some extent in the capillaries. The main place it happens is in the venules, which of course are right on the side of the capillary. There you see the diapedesis in the bottom diagram there, and in the upper right as well. Artery and vein, look at artery. Which one is the artery, which one is the vein? Can you tell? Number 1, number 2. Which one is the vein? Yeah, look at number 1, thick muscular wall, that's the artery. Number 2, thin wall, that's the vein. So large veins in the body, the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, internal jugular, which drains the brain, the azygos, which drains the chest, the hepatic portal vein, which leads to the liver, all right, pulmonary veins from the lungs, renal veins, splenic veins. These veins are all carrying a lot of blood because they're draining large areas of the body or organs that are really rich in blood. Kidneys are filtering blood, so a lot of blood in there. Spleen is a blood reservoir, lots of blood there. Liver, we're taking blood from the intestines to the liver full of nutrients. So the hepatic portal vein, a very large vein. And there's the jugular vein. So once again, how does blood get back through veins? Blood in arteries is under high pressure. Blood in veins is not under nearly as high a pressure. So how do we guarantee that venous blood makes its way all the way back to the heart? Well, there is a pressure gradient. So from the initial beating of your heart, that creates pressure. There is still a tiny bit left over, even by the time we make it all the way back. So there is some pressure still actually from the pumping of the heart, but it decreases the further away from the heart you get. And so by the time we get all the way coming back to the heart, the pressure is pretty low. There's still a little bit. Slight suction when the AV valves close, that will also help pull blood back towards the heart. Gravity for some parts of the body when standing or sitting, so think about your head. Normally if you're sitting up, blood is naturally going to flow from your brain back down towards your heart. Then the respiratory pump. So as you breathe in and out, the volume of your thorax changes as your ribs expand and compress. That actually will do a pumping action, all right? And then the skeletal muscle pump. This is the number one way that blood gets back to your heart. So what happens, see the valves? See the valves on the left? You can see the valves open, valves closed. As you contract a muscle, the muscle squeezes, and that squeezes the blood. Well, the blood is going to try to go both directions, just like we had in the heart. When the ventricle contracts, blood tries to go both directions. The valves prevent it from regurgitating into the atrium. Same thing happens in veins. The valves prevent it from going backwards. So every time you move around, every time you move a muscle, the slight contraction of the muscle is going to help pump blood back towards your heart. All right? And there you really see it. Muscles, all right, surrounding veins. Anytime the muscle contracts, it's going to squeeze the blood. The blood can only go one direction. You know, some of it might not make it all the way through, but whatever doesn't falls back and it gets stuck at that valve. And then the next time the muscle contracts, more of it will make it up above and so on. So it's going to prevent the backflow through the veins. Skeletal muscle pump is the number one way the blood gets back to your heart. So varicose veins, I'm sure you've seen people with varicose veins. Stretching of the vein wall causes the valves to become weak. So for whatever reason, and there are lots of reasons, we'll see some of them I think coming up, but the valve fails, all right? So leaky valves can cause the veins to become dilated and twisted. You can see in the illustration on the right. Once the valve fails, then the blood is going to flow backwards. And the vein having a thin wall, not being very muscular, the vein easily sort of distorts. It kind of winds around and curls up and so on, and that's all that a varicose vein is. Blood flows backwards, venous pressure is greater than normal. That results in edema, and that's really what's going on there. You've got fluid leaking out. Roughly 25% of the population has them, so 1 out of 4 people. Most common in the legs, again because of gravity. Gravity is pulling the blood downwards. That's where the valves are most likely to fail. So varicose veins, you'll see 1 out of every 4 people on the average is going to have varicose veins, mostly in their legs. Most common cause is heredity. They are hereditary. So if your parents and grandparents have them, you probably will too. Also caused by conditions that hinder venous return, so people who are on their feet a lot during the day, standing particularly. Remember the skeletal muscle pump. If you're moving around, then blood is not really pooling. But people who stand in one place, the blood pools, and that can put some stress on the vein. Obesity, pregnancy and childbirth. A friend of mine his wife gave birth. He was in the delivery room with his wife, and she was straining to get the baby out. And he said he just watched as she popped a valve in a vein on her leg, and he just watched the varicose vein form right in real time down her leg. So, yeah, pregnancy, childbirth, varicose veins. Aging, as you get older, they're more likely to show up. Now, hemorrhoids are basically just varicose veins in the rectum or on the anus. So internal hemorrhoids in the rectum, external hemorrhoids on the anus. Again, these are just veins. They're just veins where blood pools. That's what a hemorrhoid is, all right? By the way, keep these separate, all right? Asteroids are what you find in outer space. Hemorrhoids are what you find in your butt. One semester I had a fill-in-the-blank question. It said blank refers to varicose veins in the rectum. And the student wrote down asteroids. So no, asteroids are the chunks of rock in outer space. Hemorrhoids are in your butt. Which of the following veins does not lead away from an organ? Pancreatic, pulmonary, cardiac, renal, or hepatic portal? That's hepatic portal. So remember, veins always lead towards the heart. That's always true. In general, veins lead away from organs. The big exception is the hepatic portal vein. What's going on with the hepatic portal vein is that the blood that is in your intestine, it's absorbing nutrients from food. So the liver, remember, is the plasma protein factory of your body. You want all those nutrients from that you just absorbed in your intestine to go first to the liver so that it can steal all the good stuff, all the amino acids and stuff to make all those proteins. So the hepatic portal vein leads from the intestines and stomach to the liver. And then the hepatic vein leads from the liver to the heart. Did you get that straight? Don't get those mixed up. Hepatic portal vein leads from the intestines to the liver. Hepatic vein flows from the liver directly then into the inferior vena cava and up towards the heart. So hepatic portal vein is really the big exception. That's a vein that does not lead away from an organ. It leads actually to an organ.